I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. A refurbishing effort at a Brooklyn parish.
Even though it may be a statue and a Catholic religious statue, it's still an art form.
Plus, two 20th century popes may soon move a step closer to sainthood. And while Catholics in Queens pray for another man's canonization.
It would make the people in Puerto Rico proud of our heritage.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. This week, churches around the world celebrated the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, a universal feast whose origins lie in an apparition to a 13th century Englishman who was a member of the Carmelite order. Now, when it comes to the Catholic Church, Mary is everywhere and always leading people to Jesus. Here in Brooklyn, you are bound to see statues of the Blessed Mother, not only at churches, but also at people's homes. In Prospect Heights, Brooklyn, just a short walk from the Barclays Center, stands another impressive structure, the Church of St. Joseph. Not only is Mass celebrated inside, they have a garden with an altar for outdoor Masses. In that garden stand statues of Mary. Over the years, exposure to the elements has resulted in the deterioration of these statues, but an effort is underway to bring them back to life. A young woman who is not even Catholic began visiting the garden. That eventually led to a much closer relationship with St. Joe's. Her hard work and that of a very talented sculptor aims to give the garden there a much-needed makeover.
I went to the garden of the Holy Virgin Mary, most pure.
So sad. See, here's Mary, and yeah, this
Baby Jesus.
this
head.
used to be Jesus. Aww.
This is limestone, and because of the acid rain, it's deteriorated over more than 50 years. And as you can see, it's really crumbling, and it's so soft from being out here in the weather.
My name is Libby Schrader, and I am a musician. I live here in Brooklyn. I was walking by here one day, and I saw this beautiful garden, and I was able to meditate here. I actually do a meditation every day. With such a beautiful church, at the height of its popularity, there was 30,000 people coming here. Like even 50 years ago, it was huge, and it was obviously built with a lot of devotion. The church is so beautiful, and just it needs to be maintained. There's so much an emphasis on Christ being alone in the Passion and walking by himself with the cross. But in fact, according to the Gospel of John, his mother and Mary of Clopas and Mary Magdalene were there with him. He wasn't alone at the very end. He had the love of the Marys. And it's good for us to remember that gift that they gave to him. We go to yoga together on Tuesday night, and we just made friends. And I was thinking, I'd really like to replace those statues, but I don't know how much that would cost or what it would entail. I don't know anybody who carves stone. Like, and it's just sort of clicked. I'm like, wait a second, there's a woman who does the rosary who carves statues. And I'm like, this is the person I should be talking to about the statues. And that's basically how it got started.
This little piece is about $100 right here. It's 27 pounds. But alabaster is a rare stone. Once you get this outer shell off, it's a beautiful color. This is just water, but there's enough crystallization in this stone that when it's polished with many hours of sanding, it looks like this. It's so shiny, it looks like it's wet. Until you really polish it up, the dust just looks white. I'm just gonna finish the face a little bit more, make it a little bit more real looking. But pretty much it's the way it's gonna be, and I'm just gonna shine it up. This is the area where we'll be presenting the stone, and it'll be on a pedestal eye level. There will be a box where people can come and donate for our garden sculptures. Even though it may be a statue and a Catholic religious statue, it's still an art form. It's a more surreal style, so that people can come away with their own interpretation of what Mary is and what praying means to them and how God has affected their life. I could be here for 5 hours all by myself with no one else around, and It feels like 1 minute goes by. The process of sculpting is more of a meditative process for me, and the same as, you know, saying the rosaries and praying.
Blessed art thou amongst women.
Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
The next step is that we've actually started a rosary group that's here, which I hope will add to the opening up of the garden to turn it into something beyond just the stones. There's also like an element of worship. When you say the name of Mary and think about her over and over and over, it takes over half an hour, and by the time you've done it, I feel like you can feel her presence. It just brings so much peace.
When the garden is finished, there will be 8 life-size sculptures. When other people come to the garden and see my sculptures, I hope that they will know that God is in their life. Libby's really been such a supporter. We're supporting each other's work, and it's just amazing when you have that in your friendship.
Yeah, definitely. So far, I was able to buy the one small piece of stone, which is getting it started. I mean, I don't know if I could afford to buy all of the stones, but maybe we'll see what happens. But that's sort of a commitment that I've made to this garden as a result of the gift that it gave me.
We're all aching for the blessing of the Magdalene.
And you may recognize both of the women we spoke to in that report. Libby Schrader is an award-winning singer-songwriter, and Joy Mancini's sculptures have been displayed at exhibits throughout the tri-state area. Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. The skies may have opened up here in the Northeast, but in other parts of the country, they're praying for rain. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. What do some of the world's greatest athletes have in common? They all have a great coach. Well, an American runner competing for the gold in the London Olympics is claiming that he has the ultimate coach, God. Ryan Hall listed God as his coach on a standard drug test at the U.S. Half Marathon Championships. Now, a testing official asked him to name a real person. Undaunted, Hall responded, he is a real person. Hall left his previous coach, Terrence Mahan, after he questioned Hall's commitment to win in 2010 following an illness, according to the Christian Post. He told the New York Times that was a real shifting point because he says it's important for his coach to have faith in him. Hall's faith-based training methods include taking a day off every week as a Sabbath from running, rubbing anointing oil on his legs at night, and spacing out his most challenging workouts 3 days apart, a number with great significance in biblical literature. Well, in other news, praying for rain in Wisconsin. Andy Choi has that story.
The faithful will tell you prayer is part of their daily bread.
We come together as a community.
But the prayers at Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary hold a very specific intention: to deliver us all from drought.
And the intention of the Mass, as well as the intention of the people who gather for Mass, is asking God to send us the rain that we need for our fields and for our crops.
Monsignor Dwayne Mullenburn says the parish found in its Catholic Book of Prayers a special Mass dedicated to praying for rain.
So I think our example should be to follow what Elijah did, that we all come here together in prayer, climbing up our own spiritual Mount Carmel to ask our God to send us the rain.
Sacred Hearts has a strong farming community, and the drought is certainly hurting not just our farmers, but the entire congregation eventually.
But I've been praying since June 1st because since June 1st I have had a half an inch of rain.
600 acres of Al Rodemacher's corn could use a drink. The dairy farmer says faith will keep his stalks strong.
I always had a good attitude, and I feel that the Lord will help us out.
As hands of hope reach now for a higher power, the faithful at Sacred Hearts hope nature's baptism draws near.
Look on our dry hills and fields, dear God, and bless them with the living blessing of soft rain. Then the land will rejoice, and the rivers will sing your praises, and the hearts of people will be made clear.
And that report from Andy Choi. Well, Google's in a bit of hot water for its global push of gay advocacy. Countries such as Poland are criticizing the company's failure to address basic and non-controversial human rights violations everywhere. A director from Krakow's Tertio Millennio Institute told CNA that it would be much better if Google, with the same zeal, will concentrate on violations of human rights in many countries of Asia and Africa where elementary human rights are violated. Currently, Google is developing a legalized love campaign that focuses on countries like Poland, which does not recognize homosexual marriage. The visit by Pope Benedict to Lebanon later this year may bring peace to neighboring countries. At least that is the hope of Patriarch Gregorius III, head of the Melkite Greek Catholic Church. He said in a statement sent to Fides that the trip will be of special help for Syria so that the conflict may cease and the country may flourish. Gregorios also said that although, quote, there is no persecution and Christians are not targeted as such, he did say that they are most vulnerable to exploitation, extortion, kidnapping, abuse in the country. He asked for a halt to the killings and destruction to all civilians, regardless of faith in Syria. And more Middle East news. Christians of the Holy Land feeling limited. Rome Reports has those details.
From instability to fear, Christians living in the Middle East have had to deal with several challenges in the aftermath of the Arab Spring. Throughout the years, restrictions have forced Christians to flee Israel, and that continues to be the case today.
The government there has put severe restrictions on travel, on labor, on owning property, and the good Christians of the Holy Land feel themselves limited in so many ways.
American Cardinal Edwin O'Brien is the Grand Master of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre, which is a lay institution. With the current instability, Cardinal O'Brien says that helping Christians in Israel is critical, as more and more feel limited every day.
To gain greater support for the Church and the Christians in the Holy Land, I'm learning a lot day after day as to what is going on there.
The flight of Christians from the Holy Land has been an issue for years, but ironically, as native Israeli Christians continue to flee, thousands of Christian immigrants from other countries are arriving to the Holy Land in hopes of finding employment.
In other news, a leading evangelical college teams up with a Catholic school in a lawsuit against the HHS healthcare mandate. Wheaton College, a Christian liberal arts school, has joined the Catholic University of America in filing a lawsuit against the contraception mandate. Wheaton College, which is located in Illinois, opposes both the drugs and procedures that are part of abortions. Dr. Philip Ryken, president of the school, stated that, quote, we should not be coerced to provide these services. And finally tonight, Lefebvrists say no to the Vatican. Will it always be no? Rome Reports has the answer. Is that okay?
The Society of St. Pius X has posted a document in regards to whether it will be in full communion with Rome or not. The tone of the document is quite dry. Even though the traditionalist group doesn't give an explicit no in the letter, it does imply that it does not accept the current conditions laid out by the Vatican. It adds that the Catholic Church is in complete crisis and that every day the world is turning more and more away from God. In the letter, the group says that during its General Chapter meeting, it did discuss the possibility of a canonical agreement that its members and the Holy See could agree on. When the negotiations became more serious, there were internal divisions among the favorites. Now it seems the group, led by Bishop Fillet, has reached a consensus that, at least for now, seems to lean more towards no. The letter also states that the Second Vatican Council is marked with errors. It then adds that it expects a frank and serious discussion so that ecclesiastical authorities can rejoin their traditional roots. The letter ends by referencing the Society's late founder, Marcel Lefebvre, asking Our Lady to intervene so she may oust any internal enemies who try to radically destroy the Church, even more than external enemies. The Vatican spokesman left the door open to continue negotiations. He said the Holy See takes note of the response and is awaiting for further dialogue between the two. For decades now, Rome has tried to fully reintegrate the group back into the Catholic Church, but up until now, both sides have failed to reach an agreement.
Stay tuned, there's more currents after the break. Coming up, you know them as popes, but they may one day be saints. Welcome back. Pope Benedict's Year of Faith is slated to begin on October 11th and continue through November 24th, 2013. It will serve to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Second Vatican Council. The Vatican Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has said that the period is also intended to contribute to a renewed conversion to the Lord Jesus and to the rediscovery of faith. Now, the Year of Faith could also be the backdrop for another major milestone in the history of the Catholic Church. A former head of the Vatican's Congregation on Saints' Causes says Pope Benedict XVI could beatify his predecessors, Pope John Paul I and Pope Paul VI. Now, after the beatification of John Paul II in May of 2011, Pope Benedict's possible beatifications of John Paul I and Paul VI would be the first time in history that a pope has beatified 3 of his predecessors. Why is this important? How long did it take to get to this point of the procedure for sainthood? And what does this all mean for Catholics? We have the answers to all those questions for you. Earlier, I spoke with Reverend James Martin. He's author of My Life with the Saints, to gain some perspective on this very important topic. Father Jim, there are 3 steps to sainthood in official church procedures. Now, what happens once a bishop makes an inquiry in the cause of saints?
Well, a postulator or a kind of director of the process is named, and they start to examine the life of the saint and their papers and records and things like that, and also conduct interviews with people who might have known the saint or the potential saint.
Now, help us to understand, when someone is declared a saint officially, what does that mean for us as Catholics?
Well, it means that the Church is putting its full weight and authority behind the idea that they are in heaven, right? That they have made it to heaven, and in a sense, the proof, if you will, is that their prayers have been heard. You know, the miracle through their intercession. And, you know, most of the Catholics that obviously, you know, were already being considered for canonization, we already believe are in heaven. I mean, they're very holy people like Mother Teresa and John Paul and people like that. But, you know, officially it also means that Catholics, you know, can name churches after them and, you know, schools and places like that, and they can be remembered, you know, throughout the universal church in the Mass as well. So it's a kind of, you know, lifting them up for the people of God. The Church doesn't make saints. You know, the Church, God makes the saint. The Church just recognizes the saint.
And as we now know, the former head of the Congregation for the Cause of Saints says 2 20th century popes, which is Paul VI and John Paul I, could be beatified in the forthcoming Year of Faith. Why is this so important?
Well, it's important because, you know, that's 2 new saints for people to pray to. They were very beloved, you know, 2 very different guys. And it's also interesting because that means that Pope Benedict will have beatified 3 of his predecessors, Paul VI, John Paul I, and John Paul II, which is kind of interesting, and, you know, it kind of makes you wonder if, you know, if sainthood is the future for all the popes. You know, they're kind of, some people go back and forth on that. They wonder if that's a good thing, because now if, you know, if Benedict is not put up for sainthood, will it be seen as kind of a, you know, kind of a slight? So, you know, there are people that go both ways. But I think both of those guys are very holy people and deserve to be canonized.
And in keeping with that, can you talk to us a little bit about the legacy of Pope Paul VI?
Well, Paul VI was known, you know, as the guy, in a sense, who implemented the Second Vatican Council. And he was a very scholarly man, a very great diplomat. And he's also known, you know, among many contemporary Catholics as the person who promulgated Humanae Vitae, which came out against birth control. But I think his lasting legacy will be beyond his personal piety. Will be the implementation of the Second Vatican Council, which, you know, some people say was just as difficult, if not more difficult, as you know, as convening it, which is what John the 23rd did. So Paul VI actually wrapped up the council, and, you know, set it in motion. You know, really changed the church. John Paul I, obviously, you know, was only pope for around a month, and his legacy is a lot different, but very beloved for that month, and, you know, remembered as the smiling pope. He was very informal, and I think, you know, really touched a lot of people in his short pontificate.
Now, we do know that sainthood requires documentation that the candidate's interventions resulted in miracles. Can that case be made yet in either of these 2 causes? I'm not sure. If they're talking about beatification, then that means that they have some
pretty good proof that miracles have happened through their intercession. So the former head of the Congregation for Saints wouldn't be saying this if he didn't have some inside information on that. So that likely means that there have been some cases, or at least one case, that has been investigated and proven.
Father Jim, when we look at sainthood causes, now on one side we have people like John Paul I and Paul VI, with whom most, if not all, Catholics have some familiarity. And then we have people with more of a local flavor, we'd like to call it. A couple of examples here in New York State are Monsignor Bernard Quinn in Brooklyn and Father Nelson Baker in Buffalo. What chance do these local figures have of one day being canonized?
Well, there's lots of local saints, and there's lots of local saints, that become, more well known throughout the world. You think of someone like Philip Neri, who of course, was associated with the Oratorians, but also was primarily a Roman saint. You have someone like Rose of Lima, who was obviously from Lima. So these people, through their compelling stories and their charisma, become more well known. I think it just takes a little longer for the local saint to be canonized because maybe fewer people are praying to that person. If you have people all over the world praying to John Paul I and Paul VI, there might be sort of more people for whom there would be likely miracles. But so it might be a little more slow, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And most of the people who are canonized, when you see the lists, are people that Catholics worldwide probably wouldn't know. It's mostly local saints.
Father, we're all familiar with your book, My Life with the Saints. Are you working on any new books that we should know about right now?
Well, I have a new book out that's called Between Heaven and Mirth that came out a few months ago that's on joy, humor, and laughter in the spiritual life. But I'm also working on a book, in fact, right now, it's right in front of me, on Jesus. That's my next book. It's a life of Christ.
Okay, so that means that you will certainly have to be joining us very soon. Thank you so much, and thank you for spending time with us today and helping us put that all in perspective. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. And if you get a chance, be sure to check out Father Jim's book, My Life with the Saints, published by Loyola Press. Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. When we return, prayers that Blessed Carlos will soon be a saint. Popes Paul VI and John Paul I may be close to beatification, but another man is already there. And although he may not be a household name, he has a worldwide devotion. He's Blessed Carlos Rodriguez, and recently Mass was celebrated at St. Paul the Apostle Church in Corona, Queens, to pray for his canonization.
He was a holy layman from Puerto Rico. And I think it's a beautiful dynamic that we have, that a layman, Ray Amaro, who's a parishioner of this parish, is a very motivated and inspired about asking our parish, asking his fellow parishioners here to pray for his canonization, Blessed Carlos Rodriguez. And so he's really been the impetus to pray for that for this blessed holy man. And so by giving us a beautiful example in our church.
It would make the people in Puerto Rico proud of our heritage. It will make the people not only in Puerto Rico, if not all the Latin America, because he was for every nationality.
And he helped gather young people particularly to come to study and look at and realize the importance of the liturgy and how the laity should become, participate more and increase their participation in the liturgy.
He did a wonderful thing when he was alive. He was a great person when he was on earth. And now for us, he is a great saint.
He deserved to be a saint for everything that he did, everything he believed, and the suffering that he went through for others, not for him, for others from the beginning to the end. And because he accomplished what he wanted without really accomplishing the priesthood that he really was.
Despite his illness, which was a burden for him and was a cross for him, he had a burning enthusiasm to share and help others to realize how important the Eucharist is in our lives in order for us to become close to Christ and become holy.
It's my church. I love to be here, but especially today because we honor Carlos Manuel.
I'm going to continue doing this until he becomes a saint. Then after that, we'll have a big celebration when he becomes a saint.
And that is all for tonight. Be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublis. We leave you tonight with more from the garden at the Church of St. Joseph in Prospect Heights. Thank you for watching and have a good night.